Caleb, first off, why are you running for re-election?
Well, I have enjoyed my time in Jeff City my first couple years in my first term, and have been put in some really good spots. I've been fortunate to serve on good committees, be put in a place early in my tenure to be able to get some stuff done. And so I think being able to build on the successes that we've had in the first 2 years are something that I'm looking forward to, and really the main reason why I'm deciding to do this again is so that we can keep doing some good stuff that would be important for Mid-Missouri.
What issue would you say is not getting enough attention in the legislature right now?
I think there's a couple, and they're intertwined to some degree, but I think Chris Kelly and I have both kind of been trumpeting the need for infrastructure improvements, infrastructure funding, capital improvements, and that goes both on state building and higher ed campuses, but also the infrastructure conversation that's ongoing about roads and bridges. Those are things that those aren't necessarily glamorous things to do because they're long, ongoing projects that will probably far outlive a term-limited legislator. So we have to be more focused on kind of the big picture. What can we do now to set the stage for a better infrastructure environment 10, 15, 20 years from now? And so I think people are thinking about that, and obviously the sales tax that was on the ballot in August was one attempt to try to do something about it. Obviously, now that it's failed, we got to go back to the drawing board and we got to look at what we can do. But I think that conversation isn't going away for a long while until we find a sustainable solution.
What do you think the state's overall policy should be on taxes and tax credits?
I campaigned in 2012 on making sure that taxes were as low as reasonably can happen, and allowing the state to still fulfill the obligations that it has. I think we look at tax reform and tax code separately from tax credits when that shouldn't necessarily be the case. We kind of divide the policy discussion up between those two things, but those two things are obviously connected, and I think there's a growing feel and a growing sense in Jeff City amongst Republicans and some Democrats too that if you rein in tax credit spending, then putting out more tax credits, then you have the opportunity to lower tax rates for everybody, which I think is something that obviously we did this past year. But should be an ongoing discussion. And so, those two things are absolutely connected. And I don't think we need to, we have to find the balance between making sure that the tax structure as a whole, we have a lot of problems with our structure. We have a lot of problems with our tax code. It's a little outdated. We need to do some things about that. But also, making sure that folks get to keep as much of the money as they can because it's their money at the end of the day. But then also realizing that there are critical services that we as a state government that we provide for folks, and just being aware of that. And the conversation isn't just are we raising or lowering taxes, or are we putting out more tax credits or reining them in. But it's, okay, so here's what the government's supposed to do. Here's the money that it takes to do the things that the government's supposed to do. And then where do we stand from there? Do we have the money to do it? Do we not have the money to do it? And if we do, then we talk about, maybe cutting taxes. And if we don't, then you have other discussions.
What should the state's overall policy be toward education?
Well, I think there's two sides of it. One is education policy and one is education funding. As far as funding goes, these last couple of years have been good years. I've been fortunate, coming in 2012, where we're kind of on the tail end of the recession in Missouri, and revenues were picking back up at a state level. And so the last 2 years we've increased funding for K through 12 education, higher education, pretty significantly, and proud to have been a part of that. I think the education policy discussion is something that'll always be ongoing. I've been reading a number of books on how technology will end up impacting education in the years to come, and I think something that I'll be looking at, and something that I think we should, as a state, be looking at is not as an education establishment, as an education bureaucracy. That's not really a bad word, not all the time anyway, but to not push back against technology, but to embrace it and to realize that, in the years to come, I think the traditional model of just kids sitting in a desk for 7 hours a day isn't going to be the new reality. And so we've got to be okay with that. And bureaucracies at the state government level and sometimes in the education realm, it's change is hard, change is tough, but I think we need to be mindful of that. And I do think ultimately at the end of the day, what we have here at the University of Missouri, our public education here in Columbia, top notch all the way around. I mean, obviously Mizzou is, an economic driver around the state, but obviously specifically here as well. So I'm going to continue to partner with our folks, and we'll have tough conversations from time to time, and I think that's okay. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I've got their back. I'm standing behind them, and I think me and the other Boone County folks being advocates for public education, both K through 12 and higher ed, is one of the most important things we do in Jeff City.
If reelected, what would be your top 3 priorities?
I think probably the first, I've been working on kind of an education policy reform. Looking at some things with tenure, some things with boosting salaries for teachers, boosting base pay in Missouri. It's we don't pay our teachers well in Missouri. I don't think that's a secret. And so I've been working with folks really kind of on all sides of this discussion to try and find, some middle ground to maybe push some pretty meaningful kind of big ticket education policy forward. So that's going to be one of my objectives. Ethics reform, something that I started last year and will continue this year. We're finalizing the bill that we'll pre-file. I think December 1 is when we can start doing that. I think, on the ethics side, the public perception is really what needs to drive the discussion as far as what we should be doing and how we should be treating the ethics process in Jefferson City. And there are some holes that we undoubtedly need to take a look at. And so we're going to work on that, and I'm confident that we can move something forward there. I think probably the third thing is probably the ongoing healthcare reform discussion that we've been having, that stems from the implementation of Obamacare in Missouri. That's a discussion that's not going away, and so we're going to have to figure out what that looks like in Missouri, if there's a way to bring on some meaningful reforms to make our Medicaid system for folks are most vulnerable who really need access to these services, to make that better. And so that's something that we started looking at last summer, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to do.